Alrighty, well I hope you're having a nice VE day today, and we can all reflect on how lucky we are to be around through the sacrifices made by many brave men and women of our armed forces over the years. And today I want to talk to you about the quirkiest side of the game, of how it's taught and how it's explained by some of the world's great players over time. Now, I'm a big fan of watching videos and reading the books of the great players, and the videos tell us an awful lot because they use words that they wouldn't always use if they were writing something down in a book. And I'm going to pick three great coaches who are obviously great players themselves. One is Ballesteros, one's Gary Player, and the third is Trevino. And when I've watched them coach over the years, be it live or be it on the YouTube videos, oftentimes they use phrases which are quite quirky, and that's because they were artists. They learnt the game artistically, not necessarily scientifically. Now, if we look now at the modern game, most players learn the game at a young age now, and they're hooked on science. And so the science then bleeds into creating artistry in their game, but they're much more technically minded than the players of yesteryear because they know so much more and there's so much more information. But today we're going to focus on what the artists talk about. And what I've got here is a list of words that I've put together from all my research for this video, from these three great players, Ballesteros, Gary Player, Seve Ballesteros, Gary Player, and Trevino. Here are some of the words they've used: digger, flipper, recoiler, a slider, a skidder, a bouncer, a bruiser, a pusher, a puncher, a flopper, angles or dangles, bower or cupper, slapper, clapper, spinner, or a persuader. And that's a good long list there of words which are very descriptive and tell you an awful lot about the game. And I've seen Gary Player teach, and he's been saying, what you've got to do is you've got to get the club to zip. And he makes sounds, he uses very quirky body actions, but it gets the message across superbly. So, let's work our way through a few of these. I'm going to refer to my notes quite a bit today because it's a long list and my memory's not that good. What's a digger? Well, Gary Player often talks about being a digger, and that's leaning the club forwards, pick it up, and get down on it. That's a fantastic technique when the ball is sat down in thick, shaggy grass. So if you've got that ball sitting down, lean the club forwards, lean your body forwards, pick it up, and dig on it. Get right down to it. Next one on the list I've put here is a flipper. If you're someone who needs a little bit more height on the ball, I've talked about this on a previous video, get yourself into an 8-finger grip there, not your normal grip. Get yourself into an 8-finger grip there and get that right hand working under, not over. You don't want to be a hooker with your wedges, you want to be a flipper under. So if you want a bit more height, soften the arms a little bit and get that right hand flipping under. I've got my sand wedge here, I'm hitting the ball about 60 to 70 yards. Next on the list is a recoiler. Now believe it or not, Greg Norman would recoil even with his bunker shots. He would swing up and then sort of pull the club back after impact. Norman had a habit in his long game of swinging all the way through and then ripping the club back down here because it had so much energy and life in the club and in his swing that when he finished and came all the way through here, he still had the aggression there. Very strong golfer. Now that he even applied that habit of recoiling on some of his bunker shots. In and then out. And also if you looked at Norman when he chipped, oftentimes he would stop at the ball and chip out, put a nice brisk feeling onto the strike. So, now what's the difference between a slider and a skidder? A slider is if you want to play a softer shot, and a skidder's got a bit more activity in. So a slider is where the club slides on the ground like this. And a skidder is where it's got a bit more zip on the way through. And again, zip is a word I've heard Gary Player use an awful lot. So as a slider, I chip smoothly and get the club to slide along the ground. As a skidder, I put a bit more zip in it. But I'm still getting that club to skid and slide along the ground. And I'm focusing there on my task. What am I trying to achieve with that club head there? So that's the slider, the skidder. Now a bouncer or a bruiser is a great phrase of Nick Faldo's. He talks about bouncing or bruising the turf. And again, he's talking about the sole of the club there, giving the turf a bit of a knock. Not a dig, no divot, but a bounce or a bruising action there. So as I'm swinging, I set my club up vertically. And as I swing, I really get that club to skid, bounce or bruise the turf. There's quite a bit of activity on the turf. For that sort of shot there, the bruiser, you definitely need the turf to be quite firm. So links golf courses, or as I am out here today, nice dry, perfect conditioned golf course, but the turf is quite firm. There's not had much moisture recently. So what's a pusher and a puncher? Well, I'm a puncher. I was brought up on the coast, and so we'd try and hit the ball low all the time, and we'd punch the ball down like that. And so my follow through for a punch shot is very low to the ground. Now a pusher is slightly different. A pusher is maintaining this angle here, and I literally push the club to the target. That's my least favourite way of chipping personally, but I know it works for many, many amateur golfers and many professional golfers. Phil Mickelson is a pusher, another great artist, not necessarily a technician, but a great artist. And he definitely pushes on the way through. As a puncher, I come down a bit and keep my club low to the ground. Great for windy conditions, or when the surface is very firm on the ground. Now what's a flopper? Ballesteros used to swing very floppily on some of his pitch and chip shots. Hands and arms very light, very soft. Seve had extremely long arms, and there were about 3 inches difference between his left side and his right side, quite an imbalanced back position, and he would hold that club so lightly, and then when he swung, he would come through here and be very soft. And watch many of his shots with the wedge shot, and he would finish very soft, a really floppy motion. Seve had an incredibly elegant manner about him, and it showed in his short game as well. So an angle or a dangle? And these are all words I've seen and used and read about, or seen in the videos of the world's top players. An angular chipper sets that angle there, and they maintain it. Now if you're somebody who gets a bit wristy and a bit flicking, a bit uncomfortable with the wedges, you should try that. Maintain that angle there, and go back and through. Very angular. Now a dangler literally lets the club flip around like this. So the club now is dangling, just letting the weight and the force of the club just swing very, very softly. Not much acceleration in that at all. I'm not looking for a skid or a zip on the ball. It's very much a real dangle. I hold the club very lightly, dangle back, dangle through. It's a lovely way of chipping that if you can control it. Quite testy on the old nerves, this one. So it dangles and comes through. What else do we talk about? A boa or a cupper? Your left wrist. Trevino, a tremendous boa of all his chip shots, and some amazing photographs online. I don't know how he does it, but as he comes through and pitches, that left wrist is really bowed there. And when he talks, again, he's a fantastic artist on the golf course, Trevino. He talks to the left wrist bowing all the time, and he'll be giving demonstrations of doing that motion there. Now, for the amateur golfer, getting the club to bow, the left wrist to bow, is very hard. You've got to be very strong and firm in the wrists. But Trevino would bow like that and finish like that. And he put all the emphasis then into his hands and not the club head. Whilst he's trying to feel the club head, it's his hand giving him all the activity. I also said, what's a cupper? Well, that's a bow, that's a cup. Now a cupper is if you want some more height on the ball. Take the emphasis out of the club head, put it into the glove hand here, and if I cup that glove hand like that, I create height on the ball. It's not a roll, definitely doesn't roll over, it cups under. Now lots of the world's best players will start their short game shots with a cupped wrist, setting that position there. As they swing back, they cup it even further. Do you see what I mean there? That's flat, and that's a cup. Okay. A slapper or a clapper. Now you see me in lots of my videos slapping here like this, like that. It's not great for chipping that. We're not looking for that square smack at the back of the ball. We're looking for a motion underneath the ball, which is a bit more slidey. So if you are a bit of a slapper, make sure it's a two-sided slap. And what I'm saying to you there is slow down that bang. You don't want that much acceleration when you're hitting that chip shot. So it's slap, slap. Just the right amount of acceleration is going to give you the right amount of feel and control. Now, a slapper, a clapper, same sort of thing. A spinner or a persuader. Now, a spinner, and when I grew up, the ball was much softer. In 1997, the ball changed into the two-piece ball now. Prior to that, we used the Bellata ball, which is incredibly soft, and we became obsessed with backspin. How do we get the ball to spin backwards? Even to our detriment. Now, the best chippers were persuaders. if you're a spinner and you're trying to sort of get the club to really spin underneath the ball and cut underneath it like you would do in tennis, I don't think there's much benefit in that anymore because the ball is too hard to really react to it. Now you can do if you want to try and become a spinner, and what do spinners do? They pick it up and they zip under the ball. Bang! Get that club really zipping underneath it on quite an oblique strike. You see that? That motion there, get loads of spin on the ball. I think it's too hard to control now, even for the good players. So you want to be a persuader. Just a little less acceleration and push the ball to the target. I have to tell you, the best chippers I've ever seen, the only one I preclude from that group would be Mickelson. Mickelson is very, very angular for the most part when he chips. Most of the best chippers I've seen in the world tend to be quite soft in the hands and sort of just pop or persuade the ball to the hole. Now, I've talked about an awful lot of different techniques there. The big question is, which one am I? Most of those, quite frankly, I would look at hitting those shots because I grew up learning the game when it was all about artistry and much less about science. I look back at some of my books and videos from yesteryear now, and what was taught technically wasn't particularly what the good players were doing at the same time, so there's a conflict there. And you've heard me say before about the difference between feel and real. It's quite a common thing in golf, really. Now, in terms of when we discuss the artistry, you may found one of those 15, 20 words that I've used there and said, well, I like the sound of that. I wouldn't mind a bit more of that in my game, or I understand how the club interacts with the ground there. So if you're trying to learn the game artistically, and we all should try and learn the game both technically and artistically, hopefully at least one or two of those words should have hit home, or those different styles. Now, if you think you'd like to try one of those styles, just get out in the garden, and in your mind's eye, create a picture of what it means to be a digger, or what it means to be a dangler, or what it means to have an angle here, and get a feel for it. Some of them might feel awkward, some of them might feel really good. But what you have to do in golf is always be thinking about creating. Remember, Jack Nicklaus is quoted as saying he had a fresh gimmick every week to get him through the weeks. And it's an incredible thing to think the world's best player of all time had to find something fresh for his swing every single week. Now, again, it was VE Day today. It is VE Day today. I wish you all well. Hope you're having a nice bank holiday. Underneath this video, I'm going to post a link to the On Course Foundation. And if you can make a small donation, stick a $5 in the tank for the servicemen and women who are struggling to deal with life after the services, whether they're physically injured or whether they've suffered a traumatic mental injury as well. That's what we do at the On Course Foundation. We teach them golf with the intention of getting them back on the golf course as soon as possible as part of their rehabilitation. So I wish you well, God bless you all, and I hope you've learned something today, whether you're a skidder, a bouncer, a pusher, a bruiser, or whatever. Hope you found some value there. Good luck with your golf.